Today we're going to take a manatee and a Komodo dragon, and we're going to combine them with this background to create something sort of like this. It's Mutant Zoo. The first thing you have to do before you even start editing is you have to pick your pictures. Pick big ones, nice ones, and look at the angles of the pieces you're trying to put together. If you look at this manatee and you look at this Komodo dragon, they're both facing the same way, which isn't quite as important as that they're both turned. You can see the whole side of this manatee, and you can see that side of the dragon as well. You wouldn't want to use a picture like this manatee because this guy's facing the wrong direction. So when you tried to paste this dragon on top of it, you wouldn't have the right angle and it would be difficult to line up and it would just look strange. So first thing, find good pictures. So we've got this manatee and we've got this dragon and we've got this background and we want to put it like this. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a blank document that we're going to put everything on. We're going to start new and from scratch. So I'm going to go up here to File and New, and I'm going to pick the size. Now, the size changes depending on what you're doing. This is not an exact thing. So for me, I know I'm going to print this on a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper. And I know my printer likes a margin of around 1/4 inch. So if I switch this to inches and I were to take off 1/4 inch off the sides, and I'm going to print the wide way. So 1/4 inch off of 11 off either side, it's 1/4 inch plus 1/4 inch is 1/2 inch. So that's 10.5 inches. And then up and down 8.5 inches minus 1/4 inch top and bottom. That would be 8 inches. And then we're going to do a resolution of 200 pixels per inch. Oh, we got to give this a name so that we know what it is. You should always name your stuff. So let's do it. Mutant Zoo. And then maybe we'll even put over here Komodo T. And we get a blank document. Now we'll go over to our first picture, the manatee, and we're going to cut him out. There's a lot of ways to cut stuff out. This one happens to be on a blue background and it's mostly gray, so it has pretty distinct lines around it. So I'm going to guess that we can use the Select Subject tool and it's going to work great. Let's go over here to Select Object Selection Tool. And then up here you see it says Select Subject. I'm going to change it just a tiny bit. Even though it looks like it's doing pretty good, I'm going to go here and switch it to using the cloud. Now it's a little slower, but a lot of times it gets a better edge. So let's see how it does. We'll click it. It's selecting and pretty good. It got all the edges. We have this problem here on the edge where it's cut off, but we'll fix it. I'm going to press Command C on a Windows machine. You'd press Control C to copy it. Then I'm going to go over to my Mutant Zoo file and I'm going to paste it in, Command V. And there he is. I'm going to move him around a little bit. I went up to my Move tool. I'm just going to move him like here. We'll make him a little bigger, maybe. Sure. And I pressed Return to confirm that edit. And the next thing we need is our picture of the dragon. So here's our dragon, and we're going to try using the Select tool again, and let's see what that does. I'm going to select the subject. We're going to pick the cloud, and we really only need this part right here. Let's see how it does picking it. It's thinking. It's processing in the cloud. There you go. Now look, it did a pretty good job, except it selected things we don't care about, and it didn't select things we want. You can see it got the edge of the dragon. Pretty good, even over here where it fades away. But it got this stick. We don't care about the stick. We actually don't even care about this part of the body. So it did a pretty good job selecting the whole Komodo dragon. You can see it got the edge all around here, got the edge here, but it selected the stick because it looked too much like the dragon. It missed the tail, and it got this arm, and it got this arm, but it missed this right here. The tongue seems sort of important, but even more important for our purposes, we don't want all of the dragon. We want its head, and we want its tongue, and part of its neck, so we have something to blend with. So let's unselect. So we're going to go up to Select, and we're going to say Deselect. Yes, you could press Command or Control D, and that would also do it. And let's try selecting a different way. let's use the object selection tool and just go over the part we want and see how it does. It did pretty good along this edge, right? That's not bad. We can use that. And it did good here, but it lost the tongue, and then it just sort of cuts off early. I'd like to have this piece as well so that I can have it to blend with. So let's see if we can get those pieces. Let's go back to the object selection tool. And by default, the tool is on just select, new selection, which if you do something and you select something, it gets rid of your other selections. We don't want that. We want to have it select and add to it. So the second one right here is add to selection. We're going to see if it can get the tongue. So we're going to just draw a box around the tongue and then let go. And it did pretty darn good. It's missing a little piece right there. You see that? And I still want this piece. So let's add those in. Let's switch to a different select tool. Let's use this lasso, the magnetic lasso. And I'm going to add. So I clicked add. And I want to add this piece. I don't care what the edge looks like here as long as it overlaps. So I'm going to start from here. And I'm going to drag around and try and get the edge. And it kind of jumped right there away from it. So I'm going to press delete to get rid of that. And then I'm going to go, and I can always click and force it to put points in. That's probably good enough. And then we're just going to kind of make a circle around like that. Doesn't matter where it is. I just want to make sure that it overlaps, and then double click to close it. And we have all of this selected. So the only thing we need now is this little piece right here of just shadow that it didn't get. We could probably live without it, but we're going to try and get that as well. Same thing, just double click. And we have a pretty good selection. So I'm going to copy it. I could go edit and copy, or I can just press Command C, which copies it. So we'll go over to our underwater ocean mutant zoo right here, and we'll paste it in. And you can see it's a little big, and it's in the wrong place, and we can't even see the manatee underneath it, which makes it really hard to place. So let's do this. Let's turn the opacity down just so we can see through it a little bit. That's probably enough. Oh, and we should name these layers. Can you believe I haven't named these layers? Shame on me. This layer, layer 1, I'm going to double click it, and I'm going to call it manatee. And press return. This layer is the Komodo dragon head, so let's call it Komodo head. And press return. Now I'm going to go to the Komodo head layer, and I'm going to transform it. So we could go up here, and we could go to edit and transform, and free transform actually is what we want. Or you could press Command T on a Windows machine. That would be Control T. And you can see my bounding box on this goes bigger than my actual picture. That's because that's where the Komodo dragon is. Even if we can't see it on the screen, it's still there. It's just showing you your edges. So I'm going to shrink this down and try and make it match. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You can press Command and the plus key, or Command and 0 actually might be what we want here. A Command plus zooms in, Command minus zooms out, Command 0 makes it fit whatever size you're at. So I'm trying to line this up. I don't have to line the face up exactly, but I do want the body to kind of have this edge of the manatee and this edge of the dragon and this edge of the dragon to all line up. So if I try and do it, you can see I have this big hump up here and this big gap right here. So it doesn't quite work on its own. We're going to have to warp this a little bit, which is easy. Just control click on your screen, or if you have your right click turned on, you can use right click and you can go to warp. And you see now we have this grid. Now we can either grab a corner and try and grab it, or we can just grab where the actual object is. And we'll just try and move it so it pretty much follows it. It doesn't have to be exact because we're going to hide most of this, but we want it to be kind of so that we have something to work with. That's pretty good. You can see, well, maybe we'll go up a little here so we can be lazy later, so we don't have to hide the manatee. There we go. So it's in the right place. Let's turn the opacity back up so we can see how we're doing. It's in the right place and it's working, but this edge it's really easy to see where it switches from one to the other. Just looks stuck on. So we're going to go down here, make sure we're on our Komodo head, and we are going to put a mask on it. This is the mask right here. Remember, a mask just hides stuff. We're going to go to the brush. We're going to change this brush. We're going to make it a little bigger, maybe even bigger than that, maybe even bigger than that. And this will be different on yours. Yours won't necessarily be 188 pixels wide. It's just what works for the picture I have here. And I'm going to make sure my hardness is all the way down. I'm going to turn my opacity down to like 35, 40-ish%. That's just so when I brush, it hides a little bit at a time. If you don't do that, if you leave it at 100%, when you go to hide, oh, didn't hide because I forgot to switch to black. Over here, make sure you switch so that you have black to hide, or if you want to show again, switch it back to white. At 100%, if I brush across it, it completely disappears. It's kind of okay here right at the very edge, but you don't get a lot of feathering and blending in. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to switch to back to where I said, in the 30s somewhere. And now when I brush across this, I want this edge to disappear, but I'm not going to start right at the edge. I'm going to start off of it, and I'm going to brush across it, and then I'm going to let go, and I'm going to do it again. And every time I do that, where I want to hide something, it fades it out. But you see, it doesn't go all at once. Sometimes I click a lot, but it doesn't go all at once. And it gives you a much more natural blend. Now, I don't like what I just did right there, so I'm going to switch to white over here. And I'm going to make my brush a little smaller. I'm going to bring this part back. And then I don't like this little bit right there, so I'm going to switch back to black. And I'm going to hide that a little bit. And that's already pretty good. But we can make it look even a little bit better. Can you see that the manatee is kind of gray? There's not like sharp blacks on him. And there's no sharp white on him. It's either a light gray or really dark gray, or even down here in the darkest parts, it's kind of a darkish grayish blue. So we need to adjust this part to kind of match the grayness of him. And maybe we'll even match this skin a little bit. So let's start by adjusting the blacks in the Komodo head. So I'm going to go over to the layer with the Komodo head on it and make sure my box is around the actual layer, not on the mask anymore. And I'm going to put a new layer above this. And this is called an adjustment layer. An adjustment layer is just that. It adjusts the way things look. So we're going to click down here, and we are going to pick a curves layer. Now, right now, this curves layer, if I change things, it's changing the whole picture. I don't want to do that. I only want to change this layer directly underneath the curves layer. So I need to clip them together. And it's really easy. It's right here. Click the little clipping mask right there. And now, whatever changes I make happen only to that layer that's underneath. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to bring the blacks up so that they're a little more gray, a little less black. And that's right here. This slider right here, this bar, shows you points. This is where your whites are. This is where your blacks are. In between is midtones, grays, or middle colors. So we're just going to take super lazy thing, this black point, I'm going to drag it up just a little bit. If I drag it too much, he disappears. So we want the spot where it's kind of faded. Not a lot, but just that tiny difference really sells that this is the same piece. Now we're going to do one more thing to affect the body of the manatee here so that the blend looks good. And that is we are going to put a layer between these two layers, between the Komodo head and the manatee head. We're going to click on the manatee layer and we're going to put a new layer. I click the plus to do it. And I'm going to change this layer's name to Skin Color Adjustment. And here we're going to take some of the color of the Komodo's head and we're going to kind of just paste it on top of the manatee. Now the problem is, first we have to get that color. That's easy. You go to the eyedropper on the left side, and the eyedropper, when you click, picks up the color, whatever color you're on. So we're going to pick a greenish color we're on, and you can see it changes pixel by pixel. So we'll pick one that's kind of greenish. That's fine. And then we're going to go to our brush again. And now when we use the brush, you'll see it's actually drawing a little bit of color. So, but the problem we're going to have is if we brush on the actual image here, let me turn my opacity of my brush up a little bit. If I brush on the picture, can you see that we're losing the actual picture underneath it? It's covering it up. So we need to change the way that it's blending. And you do that over here in the layers menu. Right now it's blending in normal mode. That means it just sticks everything on top. But there are multiple blending modes here: darken and multiply and lighten and screen and color dodge. All of these do different things and have a different effect on your image. But the one we're going to look at right now is just color. So now if I brush, you'll see it changed that color, but it kept the details in. Now I don't want to put it there. So we'll get rid of that. And I don't want to color a lot. I just want a little. So I'm going to turn the opacity back down. I'm going to go over the part of where the manatee matches with the dragon. I'm just going to brush this in. I'm not going to even do the whole thing, I think. I think I'm just going to do just so it gradually fades in, especially since we have a lot of this color already in this manatee. If you were blending some things that didn't have similar colors, this would be more of a challenge. But for this, that's probably enough. Just enough so we see it. All right, we have one more problem with our manatee or Komodo, and that is, look at this spot right here. He's missing part of his tail. We can't just generate a new tail. Well, actually, you can now with some generative fill, but we're going to do this the old-fashioned way. We're going to steal a piece of this guy. We're going to use it as a patch for his tail. I'm going to make sure I'm on the manatee layer, and I'm going to go to my regular lasso tool, and this one just lets me grab. So I'm going to grab this thing right here. What we're going to do is we're going to take this piece and we're going to line it up with this piece, and that's going to act as a fake tail. I want to jump this to a new layer. There's a lot of ways you could do it. You could press Command C and Command V. You could say edit and copy to a new layer. My favorite though is to jump to a new layer. So I just press Command and the letter J, and watch over here over manatee. It'll say manatee copy. Oh, it didn't. It'll say layer 2. I gave you the wrong fact. Wait, I thought I renamed this. I did. Hold on, let's fix that. What do we say? Color? Skin color? Skin color. That was something like that. Keep your things labeled. It's easier. So now we have this patch right here. We can't see anything if we turn it on and off because it's right on top of the manatee where it was. But if I turn the other manatee off, then when you turn that on and off, you can see there's that piece. So we're going to take that piece and we're going to transform it. Oh, let's rename that too. Manatee tail. And so to transform this, we're going to do transform. We could go up to frame transform. I'm just going to press Command T, and you'll see the transform box is only around where the shape is. And we're going to move this over. I need to rotate it. If I hover off the edges, you can see that it's giving me this little curvy handle. So we're going to kind of curve it. We're going to kind of put it where it needs to go. Obviously too tall. If you just try and drag the edge, it shrinks the whole thing, which might work. Let's see if that works. It works okay. But I'd like a little more. So you can also hold down Shift and stretch it if you want. And then I can see that this edge isn't quite right. So I'm going to go to Warp. And I'm just going to warp it in. Let's see how that looks. Press return. Pretty good. But if you look at it, here, let's look closer. So you can see the edge of it. This is so dark, people probably wouldn't notice, but it's going to bug you. And then this little piece is off. So let's fix that little piece first. I'll just retransform. And I'll move that a little more. Oops. If I hold down Command, I can actually skew it. So that's pretty good, I think. Let's see. That's better. And then we're going to hide this edge. And how do we hide stuff? That's right, the mask. So we're going to go to the mask again, and we're going to get a brush. This time I'm going to make my brush a lot smaller, and I'm going to turn the opacity down so I can have some flexibility. And I'm just kind of hiding this edge. And you can see I did too much. And you can see this white right here. So I'll just bring it back. I'll switch the color over to white, and I'll paint that back in. And then this little corner right here, man, it's bugging me. I'm going to get rid of that. Man, I just keep doing it back and forth. This can happen, folks. That's pretty good. Okay. So now we've got our manatee, but he's just floating in space all by himself. Not in the sky. I mean, not in the ocean. He's just floating. I'm going to take all these pieces and put them together so we can move him around also. I'm going to put them in a group. So I'm going to click the manatee layer, and then I want to select all of these. The easiest way to select all of them when you have one selected is just hold down Shift and go to the other one you want. And it grabbed all the ones in between. Then I'm going to put them in a group, and I'm going to rename this group to Komodo T. And now if I do a transform, I can transform this whole group and move it wherever I want. And spin it around, make him dance, however I want. So there he is, the Komodo T. Now we need to put him into the ocean. So let's go grab that ocean, and we'll go to the Move tool. And we'll just grab the ocean, and we'll drag it onto our new Mutant Zoo Komodo T, and drag it down here. And you'll see it put it on top, which isn't great. Let's put it underneath. So we'll just drag it down, and it's there. And then if we want to move the Komodo T, we can do that. I'm going to use Transform again to do it. Command T. And we can put him wherever we want. Little Komodo T right there. And there you have a basic Komodo T. Okay, bye.